Um, since this course is about travel literature, I wanted to talk about Homer and the Odyssey. It's the original travel literature. Okay, not really, but it's archetypal anyway. It's one of the early examples. Now, not that it did not really happen. You'll see when you see the contents, you'll understand. But it's a story that is stuck in our consciousness ever since, almost 3,000 years later. They say it was composed around the 8th century BC, give or take 100 years. But it's about events that happened, if any of them happened, they would have been a few hundred years before that. So, it's set at the end of the Trojan War, and after the Greeks, it's confusing to call them that because all of them were Greek, but the Greek side won, and then the heroes returned, or tried to return home. Unfortunately, many of them did not make it. So the point of this book might be that, not only the war is hell, but it's hard to go home afterwards. In particular, it took Odysseus, the hero of the Odyssey. He's also called Ulysses. Ulysses is the Latin name. Odysseus is the Greek name. It took him 10 years to go home. And the question in the back of his mind all this time was naturally, will he have a home left to go to? Will his wife wait for him? Will his child remember him? By the time he gets there, his child is a young man. So, this is epic poetry. Originally, they say it was oral poetry and recited by storytelling bards from night to night, singing. What we have is composed in writing, but elements of it come from this earlier tradition. You can tell from certain conventions that are used. So this is a very, very old poem. It can't all be true because there are gods and monsters in it. It is mythology. But on the other hand, some of it is true, is always true. All wars have this problem, right? This is why we've remembered this story ever since. There are 24 books. It's chapters, effectively chapters. Just like the Iliad, it's supposed. This is supposedly the sequel to the Iliad, the story which was set at the end of the Trojan War. It is not likely that the two poems were written by the same collection of writers. We say Homer wrote them, but that's just tradition. But they argue about the authorship. They seem to have different ideas about the gods, so that's one sign that they weren't written by the same people. But who knows? So, 10 years after the Trojan War, Odysseus, the hero, is presumed dead by the other people on his home island. He lives on an island called Ithaca. There is still an island called Ithaca in Western Greece. You can visit that. Is it the same island? I don't know. Not to be confused with Ithaca, New York, where I used to live, named after the Greek Ithaca. His family hold out hope that he is still alive. His wife is faithful to him. Her name is Penelope. She is unusually faithful. Some of the other wives of the other heroes were not faithful. In particular, Agamemnon's wife not only found a lover, but plotted with this lover to murder Agamemnon when he came back. So, Odysseus is more fortunate than Agamemnon. So his wife is faithful to him. and his child, his 20-year-old son, is also believes that he is still out there somewhere. By the way, why is Odysseus wandering? Why is he having so much trouble getting home? The answer is he offended the god Poseidon. And Poseidon is the god of the ocean. So if you want to travel over the ocean to get home, as he does, this is a bad thing, a bad god to offend. Fortunately, one of the gods is on his side, Athena, the goddess of wisdom. So she is trying to help him, and Poseidon is trying to hinder him. But really, it's his own struggle. And just like in life, there are many things that we can't control, and we struggle, but it's not all up to us. So maybe ancient people thought of these things that we can't control, like the ocean, as gods. So, for 7 years, he has been a prisoner of a goddess, Calypso. Calypso is now the name of a kind of song, but we think of tropical islands. The goddess fell in love with him and made him sort of hypnotized him to stay there and be her slave. But finally he persuaded her to let him go, and she helped him prepare a boat and everything. So he's alive, but his family don't know it, and other men on Ithaca are trying to get Odysseus' wife, Penelope, to marry one of them. We call them suitors. A suitor is someone who is trying to make you their girlfriend, fiance, wife. Who gives you flowers and chocolate. It's an older idea. We don't use this term very much today, except joking. But these suitors are not so polite. They are boorish and violent. They come to Odysseus' house every night and drink his wine and party all night long and are rough with the servants. But Penelope is not strong enough to kick them out. And her son Telemachus is also not strong enough. He's only 20. So they are biding their time, hoping their father comes home, his father, her husband, come home, and wondering what to do about the suitors. So it's getting awkward because the suitors are demanding that she marry one of them soon. They know that she's stalling. She has ways, Penelope has ways to keep them waiting, but they know what she's doing. So, Athena, the goddess, advises Telemachus to go look for his father on the other islands. And on some of these islands, he meets other heroes, including Menelaus, who is the other hero who had a kind of a happy ending. The Trojan War was fought over a woman, according to the myth, Helen, who was so beautiful that anyone who saw her would fall in love with her. And she had many suitors, and they agreed that whoever won her hand, all the others would support him in war. Otherwise, whoever won her would then be attacked because they all want to win her. So this way, before she chose a husband, the Greek leaders agreed that whoever won her hand would be allied with all the others. That's why when Paris stole her and took her to Troy, all of the Greeks had to support Menelaus, the eventual winner, and go attack Troy together. So he won. He defeated Troy and got his wife back. And it is said that he wanted to punish her, maybe kill her, but as soon as he saw her again, he fell in love all over again and forgave her. Was it her fault that she was kidnapped? I don't know. There's more than one version. Anyway, so now when Telemachus meets Menelaus and Helen, they have a good marriage. They're happy. So go figure, you know. It's never the people you would expect. So, but they don't know. They don't know where Odysseus is. They tell him when they last saw him, but this puts Telemachus closer to his trail. Partly, it's the problem is the other gods. Athena persuades the other gods to free Odysseus, so that way Odysseus, it's up to him. He lands after leaving Calypso. He takes a boat and he finds his way to Phoenicia, Lebanon today. And in those days, if you could grab someone's knees and beg for help. That's how you beg for help in ancient Greece. So he does this to a young woman, Nausicaa, and he's being polite. She's afraid of him, but he acts in the polite way that a petitioner would, and asks her to help him and take him to her father. So she does that, and the Phoenicians, they don't know who he is, but he seems to be heroic. They like him. They want to help him. On one hand, you can see he might be tempted to stay because there's a beautiful woman. But no, he continues. See, temptresses. It's not that she's evil. She seems to be a nice girl, but the temptation is not to continue with the quest. So they have a kind of a banquet, a dinner, and they ask Odysseus to tell his story. And this is where we find the most famous parts of the story. It's very episodic. He tells how he and his men were on the island of the lotus eaters. The lotuses that he and his men ate would make you forget everything. Maybe it's like a drug. So that's one episode. In another episode, he fought the Cyclops. A Cyclops is a monster, probably large, with one eye. Here's a picture of a Cyclops. It's important they only have one eye. You might hear the name from Cyclops, the X-Men character who shoots eye beams from his eyes. He looks like he has one eye. So if you saw any of the X-Men movies, there's a hero named Cyclops in them. See, the mythology is still with us today. He meets a witch called Circe, Kirke. She turns his men into pigs using magic. She's a witch. At one point, he goes into the underworld. Not hell exactly. It's the place you go when you die. It's not fire and stuff. It's underground. And this is often a part of the hero's journey, the journey to the underworld. Then there's the episode of the sirens. The sirens are creatures who sing, and they have a beautiful song. When you hear their song, if you're in a boat, you can't help but wreck your boat. So today, the words, if you hear the word siren, it's probably in connection with police cars or ambulances or fire trucks. You know, they have the noise maker. That's a siren, even though it's not beautiful. And then the story of Calypso. So these take about three books of the Odyssey, but whenever they make a movie version, they always focus on these because these are the most dramatic. I mean, who could not want to watch a group of men fight giants with one eye? They blind him. So, finally, he does make it home, but that's not the end at all. This is the climax. He has to fight the suitors because, A, they won't believe it's him, and B, even if they did believe it, they would not welcome him coming back because they all hoped that they would get his lands and his wife for themselves. So, but he's very intelligent. This is one of the most important things about Odysseus. He's intelligent. Remember the Trojan horse? That was his idea. Athena, also the goddess of wisdom, is helping him. So she helps him. She tells him what is going on the island and what to do when he comes back. So he comes back in disguise. There's magic, and he slowly persuades the son and then the wife and the dog. Who he is. His dog recognizes him. He had a dog that is now an old dog who is so happy that the dog dies out of happiness to see his master. His wife doesn't quite believe it's him, but she tests him. She says something about how she had trouble moving their bed. This is a test. Their bed could not be moved. The bed was built into a tree, so it's stuck in the ground. There's no way to move it. But he, of course, knew what she was talking about. So he answers her tests and persuades Penelope that he is her husband. And finally, he has a big fight with the suitors and wins. Some people think that the original ending was not a happy ending. Well, the ending we have today is a happy ending. As happy as it can be when you go home after 10 years. That's not 100% happy, is it? But maybe the original ending was one in which he dies. Maybe they all die. Something like that. That would be more appropriate to the theme of how hard it is to go home after a war. But that's not the ending we have. Well, this story is still with us today, not only in the original, but many times in many ways. The word Odyssey is our general word for a long, meandering voyage. So 2001, A Space Odyssey, is a movie about a long voyage through space. It has nothing to do with, other than that, with, here's the poster for it, Space Station. It has nothing to do with Odysseus, but it's just, the word means a long journey. The story of the Odyssey has been adapted several times but set in modern times. Cold Mountain made it a love story about a soldier returning from the U.S. Civil War. And that does have a sad ending. They went to the unhappy ending for that one. It's a tragedy. But other than that, for all the monsters, they translated it into something realistic. There are, nothing supernatural, nothing that can't happen. But everything in the story was represented by some realistic figure. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was a humorous version. And it also followed the different stages of the Odyssey. Probably the most famous adaptation was Ulysses by James Joyce. It is set in 1904 Dublin on one day. Every year on that day in June, people who are fans of James Joyce gather together and visit everywhere that is mentioned in the novel. This is one of the great novels of the 20th century. And its hero is not a heroic figure. He's an ordinary man, Leopold Bloom, and the Telemachus figure is another ordinary person. They get drunk together and wander around Dublin. That's not very heroic, but oh yes, and his wife, Leopold Bloom's wife, is not waiting for him like Penelope. She's having an affair with another man. But James Joyce, his point was probably that our own life, our ordinary life, can take on a heroic quality. So even, everyday life has greatness in it. And we are like these heroes, even if we don't always feel like heroes. So Odysseus and the Odyssey are still with us today and still inspiring us.